Welcome to LaBelle UK. My name's Jodie.
My name's David. Today I would like to introduce you to the Next 120S training and installation video.
So welcome to the Next 120S. This little unit carries a door leaf of 120 kilo. It can be used on both internal and external doors. It has a fire rating and a spring, so it can be set as power open, spring close or power open, motor and spring close. The 24 volt brushless motor has a power supply for external accessories of 24 volt 0.8 amp. The power consumption on continuous opening and closing is 50 watt and 5 watts in standby, and all that compacted into a little size of 520mm length, 60mm height and 76mm depth. Now we'll go to Dave, who'll show us how to set it up.
Please make sure before you install anything on the door itself, make sure the door's free swinging. Make sure there's no tight spots on the door, and please make sure if you're using an aluminium door section that the transom closer inside there is actually a dummy transom closer. It's no good having a non-hole open or hole open transom closer and draining the oil out. It doesn't work. You have to fit a dummy. If you've got a floor spring closer in there, please put a dummy floor spring closer on there. The door must be free swinging. I can't stress how important that is. When you get your Next 120S unit and you remove it from the box, first thing you've got to do is strip it down to the basic chassis. Remove the cover, then remove the end caps like so. You have to strip all the unit down to get to the back plate. This will only take a couple of minutes. Remove the components. A little bit fiddly, especially when you've got big fingers. And remove the control panel and power supply in one. And pull out and place like so. So you can see the back plate. You notice the back plate's got two holes in there. You now have to remove the gearbox. With the 4 bolts showing. Once the unit is stripped down, you are left with your back plate of the actual unit itself. We use the label Next 120 fixed plate, like so. It's reversible. If you notice, it's got 5 holes in the fixed plate for your mounting holes in the back of the unit plate itself. Our demonstration unit that we've got here now is the Next 120S with a standard slide arm. You'll notice that the power supply is always closest to the pivot point, whether it be articulated arm or push arm. It's always close to the pivot point. We've used a fixed plate on this. The reason being is that we've got a transom closer in there, and if you was to screw into that, you'd hit the transom closer. So that's why we use the fixed plate. We put the fixed plate up there like that, so you've got 2 extra tags to screw in to make it secure, and you've got multiple screw points to screw the actual plate on. But if the wall or the bulkhead was sloping forward or backward, you have got some shim packers that go behind the plate to pack it out level. When you've mounted your Next 120 fixed plate, we're using a standard slide arm. This only applies to this particular fixed plate that you get in your pack. The height where you mount it to on the bulkhead is from the top of the door to underneath the edge of the fixed plate is 21 mil. If it was an outward opening door, you'd use the same fixed plate, but instead of being 21 mil, it'll be from top of the door to underneath the plate 6 mil as it's pushing the door outwards, and you want the arm to pass through the actual transom. When your fixed plate is secure on your bulkhead or your brickwork, wherever you're fitting it to, you can offer the back plate of the unit onto the fixed plate. You have 5 screws provided in your pack from the Next 120 fixed plate to screw it firmly onto the back plate itself. If you need to adjust the unit because you've got architrave around there, or you're going to be close to blowing any brickwork out, you can add extensions to your knuckle. You can add a maximum of 3 extensions to the knuckle. These extensions are stackable. Okay, each extension is 25 mil. With the particular knuckle in there, what you've got as a slide arm, you can get up to 96 mil, and that is the maximum. You don't want to go any further than that, because what you'll do is put undue force and strain on the bearing gearbox. So when you've got your back plate mounted, you're now going to offer your motor gearbox up onto the unit itself. If you notice, we've got A showing on this. This means to say that this door is opening inwards, and it will be spring closed. If we flip it round like that and B is showing, this is now opening outwards and spring closed. You've got to get this right before you go any further, because otherwise you'll be trying to open the door against the spring. When you've got the unit mounted, make sure it's perfectly horizontal and perfectly vertical. You're now got to think about putting the mains power to it. So we supply in our kit to you 0.75 cable. Because this is low power consumption, that's the only cable you require. It's 2 meters long we supply you with. The reason it's 0.75 as well is because it has to be encapsulated into the mains plug. This is to stop you from electrocuting yourself if you have to leave any tails out. It plugs into the back there. Plug it in, and then switch on the power, the mains power, and you'll hear this, saying the unit is ready. Do not attach the arm at any point in this procedure. Put the toggle switch onto number 2 and press and hold this little button. You'll hear these beeps, and the spring will start to rotate to pre-tension it to roughly 1 turn. At the end of the full tension, you'll hear this sound. The spring is pre-tensioned. Under no circumstances now do you put the toggle switch to 0 or switch the power off, because if you do, I'll demonstrate, I'll press it to 0, it will detension, or if you switch the power off, it will detension, and you'd have to go through the process all over again. When you've adjusted the spring tension to its 1 turn, open the door and attach the arm. When fixing the arm to the actual unit, on a slide arm or an articulated arm, we recommend that the door is in the open position. That will give you the recommended spring tension. Attach the arm with a 5mm Allen key driver. Nice and tight. Go round and fit the pin. And tighten the door with a 10mm spanner. Once the arm is attached, switch it to 0 and the door will close under the spring.
Okay, so once you've got your unit and your arm mounted, before you go any further with mounting any of the other accessories, you're going to do your initial setup in the programmer. So when I plug the programmer in, the screen will light up and the doors will automatically acquire. You can see here it will find an M with a padlock to say it's found the door, and it will take us straight into a two-way screen. From here we're going to press and hold the set button and go into our setup, which is the top left hand box. We can enter into this using the snowflake. We only ever go into this once in the initial setup and we don't use it after that. Password comes preset from the factory of all A's. And we want to do a full setup, which is we can enter into pressing the F1. So we know we're in setup mode because all of the left-hand side is showing us as S. You want to follow the center line, so this is what we've got selected at the moment. To move up and down on this menu, you can use the F3 and the F1. So S1 is asking us what we are working on. So for this particular demonstration, we have a single unit. So you want to make sure that's off. Scroll down to S2 using your snowflake. Electric lock. Now at this point we won't have anything else connected, so we're not using that, so we'll leave that off. S4 is asking us if we've got a battery pack. Now in the Next 120S there's no battery. You can purchase this as an additional item if required, but it doesn't come with one as standard, so we'll leave that as off. SO5, safety sensors. Again, at this point in the initial setup we don't have anything connected in terms of safety, so we'll leave all of these off. So SO5 off, SO6 off. Now S10 is our open input contact selection, so this is if you're using a fire alarm. If you are using a fire alarm, what we'll do at a later stage is go back and change it to a normally closed circuit. We always leave this as a normally open circuit if that's not being used for fire alarm purposes. S11 is digital programmer, which is what we're using at the moment. Again, if you put in a key switch in at a later stage, we can go back and change this. Then S12 is asking us if we're closing by spring only or we're closing by spring and motor. Now this is completely up to you with the requirements of the door that you're fitting. For this demonstration purpose, I'm going to leave it as spring only. S13 not used, so we can skip past. And then it's asking us to perform our setup. So to do the setup, we'll press the snowflake, OK, and the door will start to open. Okay, so when the door's doing its learn cycle, it's going to open slowly. If you haven't got a physical stop in the door, what you want to do is stop the door manually at 95 degrees. The door's going to beep. It's going to back off 5 degrees and then it will continue to close slowly. So once your door has gone through its initial setup cycle, it's going to return you back to this screen with the 8 boxes. To move across, you can use your F1 button, and what you want to do is go across one into switches and potentiometers. Enter in using your snowflake. And this is where we're going to control certain parameters of the door, for example the speeds, how long it stays open. There are many other things that you can control through this programmer, but for the point of this demonstration we're just going to go through the basic setup. So this button here is a good one to use. At any point through this process you can use this button to activate the door. So you return back to this menu and press the F1 and it will open the door. So when you're changing a parameter, for example opening speed, you can press it to see if that's the right speed before you move on to your next step. So the basic setup is PO1, which is your opening speed. Again, this is dependent on what door you're working on, so we can't tell you a standard percentage. It would all depend on the weights and where the door is. But you set that as required. PO2, the same with the closing speed. Now PO3 you can come back to at a later stage, and what this is if the door's opening out onto a wall or a barrier and your safety sensor is seeing that too early, this allows you to blank off some of that safety sensor to get the door to the fully open position. But if this is required, you refer back to it at a later stage, so for now we won't touch that. And then PO4, which is our pause time, we recommend this is usually about 12%, and this is usually giving you around 4 to 5 seconds. So those are the basics for the standard setup. So there are many other functions that you can change on this programmer, and all these potentiometers and functionalities are fully explained in our installation manual that comes with the unit. There's also a QR code sticker on the motor itself, and that will take you to all of our installation manuals and wiring diagrams, which are fully downloadable in PDF.
On our demonstration door today, we have a 3-position key switch wired in, which will control the door. To understand how that's wired in, please refer to our wiring diagram instructions as supplied. We also have Optex safety sensors, which we'll be talking about in a second. We're going to strip it down and I'll show you how to set them up. Okay. On our demo unit today, we're using the Optex OA Edge safety sensors. You have a master sensor and a slave sensor. The master sensor is 9 times out of 10 always on the side of the operator, as a rule of thumb. From the edge of the door to the module itself should be no more than 70 mm. because you have one beam coming down the door, which is covering the edge of the door, and another 3 beams coming back towards the hinge point to give you a good even coverage. Okay, now we're going to perform a basic setup on the OAH2. Before we begin, make sure the TX is closest to the leading edge, very important. We are going to put dip switches 1, 3 and 7 on, which is the basic setup. For any more functions, please refer to the Optex manual. We'll also need to go around the other side to the slave unit, because that is the closing face of this particular door. On the B bank of the slave unit, we have to put dip switch 4 on. This is your closing face of your door. Attach your sensor case and also put your safety sensor module in. Note the TX should always be close to the leading edge of the door, and it should be no more than 70mm away. This is the slave module. If you look, it will tell you slave module on it. Because this is the slave module and this is the closing face, you have to tell the sensors which is the closing face of the door. Otherwise it won't know where it is and you'll get an error come up. So in this case, this is dip switch 4 on the B bank. That will depict that this is the closing face of the door. So now we'll press and hold the function switch until the green light goes off. Step back and the light will go solid green. The unit is now set up off the floor. It knows its opening sensor and it knows its closing sensor. But now you might have to do another adjustment, which you will have to do another adjustment, is to adjust the rake of the actual sensor with this screw. You can adjust it so it goes closer to the door or further away from the door. Adjust it to where you think is suitable for that particular door you're using, and do the same for the slave. Once you've set your Optex safety sensors up by adjusting the dip switches, pressing the function switch and adjusting the rake, we're now going to test them to see if it complies to EN 16005 standards. We're going to use a test box, which is EN 16005 approved. We're going to place the test box at 45 degrees of the rake of the door. We're going to activate the door by means of a fob. Door will open. The door should stop before the box. If it hits the box, the test has failed. Remove the box. The door will open slowly in a controlled manner and then close. If you need to test the box in other places, you can along the rake of the door.
Okay, so to turn your safety sensors on in the programmer, you want to go up to F11. You can hold this button down to skip through the menu a little bit quicker. So this is your sensors. So we're turning on our safety sensor for the closing side. Up to F12, turning on the safety sensor for the opening side. F13, the test for the closing side, that is. And then F14, your test for your opening side. It's important that you've got your test on to conform with the regulations. Another important thing in F15, it's asking you about the wave of the sensor. If you're using Optex sensors, which we do as standard, you want to make sure this is turned off so it's a low wave.
If you're going to use activation sensors on your door, we will supply you a 106 Optex activation sensor, such as this one. This Optex 106 sensor is a very good sensor. It's a microwavable one. You can adjust it like so, or like so. And with the sensor sensitivity adjustment on the side. I would recommend when you install one of these, you put dip switches 1 and 4 on. 1 and 4 basically, you've got unidirectional or bidirectional on number 1, so it'll see me going towards the door. It won't see me coming away from the door. Dip switch 4 is immunity to stop any false activations. Because we're in a small environment, I'm going to fit this narrow lens on there to help with the activation so it doesn't get any false activations. I'm now going to plug in. It will flash green a few times and then go solid green. As I approach the door, it will open and turn red to say it's received the signal. turn green and close. If you notice, I've got this installed in the middle of the door frame because this is the closing face. It's just seen me again. I'll just unplug that while I talk about it. It's in the middle of the door frame. It could be anywhere on that bulkhead. If you had this on the opening side of the actual door, you'd put that above the pivot and adjust it accordingly.
Thank you for watching this video on the Next 120S. If you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to get in touch.
Thank you.